What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the MLF Champions Club Unpacking with the Pros, where we're going to be breaking down all the baits, just like last time, that we've added to your featured lineup this month to be delivered to our subscribers. And we're going to be interviewing some of the best pros in the world as they unveil the baits and then deep dive into the tips and techniques that they've used to have success with these baits throughout the course of their careers and at the highest levels of professional bass fishing. So that's what we do here. And just real quick, I want to make sure I communicate here what the purpose is of Unpacking with the Pros. This is not going to be like a 2 to 3 minute little quick video where, we flash the baits in front of you, tell you the retail value, and that's pretty much it. We think it's more important to share that information with you. You shouldn't have to be concerned as a subscriber that we're sticking to our value. When we say 5 to 6 premium baits, we mean it. It's going to be there every single time. Don't expect that, 6 months down the road, we start slacking off and we're just trying to pile in as much cool stuff to get you to subscribe, only to start putting in knockoffs and stuff like that. We're never going to do that. We're going to stick with premium baits. I know what's coming in future months, and I can tell you it's quality, just like last month. That's what you can expect. So all that to say, we think the better use of our time is to talk with some of the best pros in the world, so they can share information that we'd all like to hear, whether you're somebody that's brand new to a technique, has never used one of the lures that was in your box, or maybe you're the best buzzbait fisherman in the world. I think we can all agree that there's always something that we can learn to improve our game. So that's the goal here, is to focus more on the information and less on just trying to tell you the value that's in the box, because the value's there. It'll be there every time with the baits and with the discount codes. Real quick, just to cover the discount codes that are coming this month, just like last month. We saw some great discounts from TH Marine, from Yeti Coolers, from Abu Garcia, and from Favorite Fishing. This month, discount codes are great. They're awesome, just like they will be every single month. They're going to continue to get better, by the way, as this program lives on. We're just in month 2. We got to get our feet underneath us, and you can expect to only see more value. But this month's discounts, just to mention real quick, you got one from Wiley X. You got a 50% off discount, a really nice Ducket fishing reel. And you're also getting a discount from TH Marine and also one from Yeti Coolers again. So, but these will rotate. You're going to see different brands offering discounts every single month. We just wanted to mention that real quick. Subscribers, that's what you can expect to see this month in the Champions Club. So enough hearing from me. I know we want to talk to some anglers because they're going to be able to really share the information that we want to hear on what baits are coming and how to use them. So without any further ado, let's jump into it. Great lineup of baits, great lineup of pros that we're going to be talking to. And our first one is one that I'm sure most of you out there have heard of. You might know him by his other name of Big Fish. He's from Lakeland, Florida. He has over $2 million in career earnings, 96 top 10s and or 96 top 20s and 30 top 10s throughout the course of his veteran career. Bobby Lane, Big Fish Bobby Lane. Welcome to the Champions Club. Unpacking with the Pros. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's finally nice to be in the springtime, and temperatures are starting to heat up a little bit. We have fished some pretty brutal conditions this year. You guys, this month will be getting the Digger 6.5. You'll be getting it in the red crawfish color. And let me tell you a little bit about this bait. Number one, it comes with fusion hooks. This is a Berkeley hard bait, and it comes with fusion hooks. You do never have to change the hooks on this thing unless you roll the over a log and you hang it and bend it, or a dock or something like that, guys. These hooks are amazing. My favorite way to throw the Digger 6.5 is on a crank and reel, somewhere in that 6 range, 5 to 1, 6 to 1, something like that. I like it on a slower retrieve. And there's a few rods that I really like it on. 7-foot medium veracity, Veritas. If you really like a real soft tip, then you need to try the Ike 7-foot medium cranking rod. It is really got a parabolic tip, and it has a lot of action. The line that I like to throw this bait on is 12-pound, 100% fluoro. If it's really cold and really slick, I might go to 10-pound or even 8-pound. But all in all, the best line to throw with the Digger 6.5 to get the best action is 12-pound, 100% fluorocarbon. And you might think, where do I throw this bait, Bobby? Where do you catch fish on it? And guys, I'm telling you, I keep this bait tied on year round. We're starting to get into a little bit of a shad spawn right now down here in Florida, where it starts to heat up quicker than most places. This thing is wonderful around rocks. It's great around any kind of deeper structure, down on the Harris Chain or Lake Toho, that we got a lot of submerged hydrilla that grows in that 6 to 8 foot range. And with the 12-pound fluorocarbon, you can keep this bait right through that strike zone. And what this mimics is the perfect shad all over the country. It's the perfect size, and it comes through cover really well. It comes through the grass really well. You can snap your rod if you get a little bit on it. But the red crawfish, you think more of a springtime color, but we have tons of colors. David Fritz has put his signature on these baits, and he has gone to bat and really stood behind them all. And I mean, we make it all the way up to a 25 footer. And if you guys have played with the Fritz side at all, you know how well the Fritz side crankbait is. You don't even have to change the hooks on it. And it's the same about this Digger 6.5. It's a wonderful bait. You guys, when you get them in your package, make sure you tie them on and throw them around deeper docks, deeper rocks. These fish post-spawn, pre-spawn, shad spawn, throwing around rock, grass, it doesn't matter. Take it out of the pack, tie it on just like it is, and you're going to catch more fish with it. That's the wonderful thing that Berkley has been doing over the last several years, is making all of us become better fishermen, from the flatworms to the max scent, the general, the power bait, the Berkley hard baits, the Chapo, the cane walkers. Everything we're doing is pro designed for the most part, and guys that have a niche, which we know David Fritz knows everything about crankbait fishing. So you guys enjoy the one that you're getting in the mail. Thank you for being a part of Major League Fishing, and I hope you catch the biggest bass of your life on the Digger 6.5.
Talking about another item here that's in the Berkley hardbait lineup, also designed by David Fritz. You've got the dredger, and then you have the digger. So the dredger, just looking at it, is obviously it's got the weighted bill. It seems like a little bit thinner of a profile, I guess, which would make me believe that it has a little bit tighter wobble than the Digger 6.5. How does the action, the wobble of your crankbait factor in this time of year? And is there a temperature range where you say, hey, I'm gonna go less with the tight wobble and more with these wider wobble style baits?
Yeah, man, that's an easy question, and I hope you guys understand the answer. The cooler the water, the tighter the wobble. The fish are more lethargic, and the bait likes to swim tighter, and the fish don't like to react to something really, really making a lot of action, like a wake, a bigger fat lip wake bait, some style like that, creating a lot of action. When the water temp's cooler, you want a tight wobble. As the water temp warms, gets up into the 70s, up into the 80s, if it even does that in some places, that's when I like to go to a little bit bigger wobble. But right now, the Digger 6.5 is my choice. It just catches a lot of fish, and it'll catch big fish too. The lot of guys in Gunnersville and those grass lakes, phenomenal on those short, shallow ledges that drop off just a little bit.
Absolutely. Bottom contact's obviously essential with any crankbait, but it's not always 100% required. Tell me a little bit about the difference in your cadence, your approach when you're fishing the top of grass, maybe versus, a rocky flat or point.
Yeah, so, when you're cranking grass, what you like to do is get the bait in the grass and kind of pull it out a little bit. If it's eelgrass, hydrilla, milfoil, whatnot, you want the bait to swim over the grass, but you want that reaction strike also. And the best way to do that is more with like a 7-foot medium rod, 7.2 medium, something you can whip and snap that's got a good backbone and kind of a more faster tip that's going to allow you to pop that bait real quick, and it's going to snap that bait out of the grass for the fish to react to it. And when you're cranking rock, one thing that's important is to make sure that you throw way past the rock pile. If you're fishing riprap, that's a different story. But if you're fishing a shallow ledge or a hump that's got some rock on it, make sure you throw way past that rock and you bring that bait to it, where you're not throwing the bait right on top of the rock. And as you crank it down, you're only hitting half the rock pile. So, keep that in mind when you're cranking. just snap that thing out of there. I usually don't use too much body language at all. I keep everything in my wrists and my arms. I got the right rod and the right reel for the application. And that's what makes it easier for me to just go out there and throw a crankbait and have all the confidence in the world in it.
Absolutely. Well, hey, it's that time of year. I would have to imagine that this bait is playing a factor all over the country right now, just like you said. But you've got some other things on your mind. Now you got to get packed up, ready for a bunch of events coming up on a few different circuits. So we'll let you get back to that. We really appreciate you taking some time to drop some knowledge on us about crankbait fishing. Awesome downloading there with Big Fish Bobby Lane on the Berkley Digger 6.5 and special red crawl. Coming to our subscribers, on its way to you. So up next, getting ready to introduce one of the young guns on the Bass Pro Tour right now, a graduate of Oklahoma State University, former college angler, and he's been succeeding at the highest levels. Back-to-back Red Crest qualifications, finished 14th in Angler of the Year last year. So despite having a very young career, he's definitely one of the up-and-comers and one of the people to watch. From Blanchard, Oklahoma, Zack Birge. Welcome on, Zack. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've got a couple of exciting things coming from Guggen. We're just going to introduce them one at a time because we don't want to, spoil the excitement here, and we want to talk a little bit about each one of them. So with our first bait reveal, what are our subscribers getting this month?
The first bait they'll get will be the Guggen Baits Crack and Craw. This is a bait that's offered in a couple sizes. This particular one is probably my favorite. It's the new Junior. It's the 3-inch version. The things you can do with this bait are endless. From flipping it, just the bait itself, it's small enough you can put it on a Ned head. You can put it as a jig trailer, swim jig trailer, clear water scenarios, dirty water scenarios, anything and everything in between. This little bait here is a fish catching machine.
I fished with these a little bit, and you definitely notice the look and feel of this bait separates it from, typical, crawl style bait. I also noticed the smell of these things when I opened the bag for the first time. What am I smelling there, and how big does fish attractant wise, how big of a factor does that play?
I'm personally not someone that really cares a ton about scent, but I will tell you, when you open this package, you will immediately be hit with a scent that is potent.
Yeah.
It will clear your nose out instantly. It's very strong. So if you're one of those anglers that believes heavily in scent, this is going to be another good bait for you, of course. But definitely load it up with some kind of special sauce.
Yeah. That's the juice right there. It seems like a pretty salty bait too. But since you mentioned the subject of does attractant matter, a lot of people think it does. A lot of people think it doesn't matter. The same can be said about like chartreuse dip and dye. Do you use chartreuse dye? Do you think it plays a factor, or any kind of dye?
I do. I use chartreuse and I use orange pretty often. And what I'll do with it, for instance, with this bait right here, if I'm flipping it around something, if it's clear water, most of the time that's when I'll be using it. Your crawfish are always going to have a little different color tips on their pinchers and so on and so forth. And brim have a little bit of chartreuse on their tips of their tails. And, I'll dip just the corners of these pinchers, just that bottom edge. And it just brings a little bit of realism to it, especially in those clear water scenarios. When fish are real picky, they're really looking at a bait and visually studying it before they eat it. Whereas if it's a dirty water scenario, maybe you're throwing a black and blue or something, you're just turning and burning. It's not really something that they're looking at and studying. It's more of a reaction bite. So for something like this, which is something I would throw in clear water, probably going to dip the pinchers and try to match that natural color if those fish are really going to be looking at it.
Absolutely. Well, that makes me feel better because I've been doing that for years and getting dip and dye all over my hands. Basically 50% of the time that I'm opening that bottle, I'm getting it all over the place. So glad to know that wasn't a waste of my time. Switching gears here, talking about choosing between which bait you're going to flip. You mentioned using this at, a Texas rig, flipping it. How do you choose between a craw style bait and a beaver style bait? Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you make that decision?
For me, I usually start with both, honestly. And what I'll do is I'll flip something that is more of a craw style bait or a beaver style bait. And I generally just let the fish tell me what they want. If I'm getting bit more with something like this, I'll just stick with it. If I'm getting bit more on a beaver style bait, I'll stick with it. The things that I really try to focus more on are the size, whether it's a junior size bait like this or if it's a full size bait. I'll try to focus more on which one they like better, and then I'll go into colors. And if I'm still struggling with getting bites and I don't feel like I'm getting as many bites as I should be, that's when I'll try to go down to the smaller size, and I'll also go down on my line size too. I'll even go down to this junior size and I'll flip it on, say, 12 to 14 pound line, present more of a finesse style flipping approach with it versus throwing a standard size with, a flipping rod and 30 pound braid or 60 pound braid, something like that. But I always start with the heavier setups, the bigger baits, and then I let the fish tell me whether or not I need to downsize my line, downsize my baits, change colors, or go more to a beaver style bait or a craw style.
Absolutely. And I know, like you said, it's a lot of it's personal preference, seeing how the fish want it. But I got to ask if you're also making the same decision between a jig, whether that be a standard flipping jig or more of a finesse style, and going with a Texas rigged version of this and flipping it. How do you make that distinction between going with a jig versus a Texas rig?
Where I go from a jig to like a Texas style presentation is more based on water temperature and time of year. So I generally will stick with a jig primarily, or I'll at least try to start with a jig if the water's cold pre-spawn, all the way up until pretty close to when they get on a bed. Once they get on a bed, then I'll switch over to just flipping this Texas rig. And throughout the rest of the year, I generally will stay with just a Texas rig as well until we get back into those late fall, back into that wintertime pattern again. Then I'll go back to a jig. It's just something I've got a lot of confidence in earlier in the year when the water's colder. I'm fishing a little bit slower. A jig presents a meal to them versus, a peanut. And that's just kind of what I got confidence in. Usually that water temperature's mid 50s or so when I'll switch over to a Texas style, and I just kind of go with it from there.
That's great logic. It's good information to know. And since we're on the subject of talking about things that, it's personal preference, it's things you've built confidence in. You hear people say, what's your favorite color? Well, my top 3 favorite colors are green pumpkin, and green pumpkin. You hear that. And then you hear about the type of people that are like, well, have you heard about that Scuppernong candy apple, new color that this company's released? What do colors mean to you? Is there anything outside of the green pumpkin, black and blue, watermelon red lineup that you typically see? Or do you sometimes mix it up? Is there a color that you're keeping in your back pocket?
Man, I try to keep it as simple as possible. To me, it's green pumpkin, a watermelon version, and then something dark, whether it be a black and blue, black neon, June bug, or a green pumpkin, or a watermelon version, watermelon red or watermelon seed, something like that, just depending on the watercolor. I try to keep it as simple as possible. Try not to get fancy with colors. You hear people all the time saying exactly what you just said, and to me, I try not to buy into that stuff. I try to keep it straight. Fish, they don't get that good a look at it when it comes by, whether it's Scuppernong purple candy with red flake and whatever, or if it's watermelon red. They're not going to study it that much, in my opinion, to determine whether they're going to bite it or not. So I try to keep it simple.
Well, the good news is our subscribers are getting just good old-fashioned green pumpkin right here. So that's what everybody's getting. We didn't want to waste anybody's time with any crazy colors. But Dugan, from what I can tell from their color selection, they're all pretty solid. And I know that I've been stuck in this situation a million times where, like, I'll go fishing and maybe I'll be in a tournament and I'll switch from green pumpkin blue flake to green pumpkin purple flake, and then all of a sudden I'll start catching them, and I'm like, it's that green pumpkin purple, man. But it sounds like that may not be that big of a factor. It's about, but confidence is important too.
It is. Confidence is got more to do with it than a change in flake. Obviously, different places you go throughout the country, crawfish vary a little bit in color, brim vary a little bit in color, and so there is something with it, but confidence overweighs all of that. If you're confident in a bait, you're going to get more bites with it.
Absolutely. Well, that's it, folks. That is the crack and craw that's coming to our subscribers this month, but you're getting something else from Googan Baits. What else are they getting from Googan this month?
They're also going to get a Googan Baits 3.8 inch saucy swimmer. Another bait that catches a ton of fish. This is it out of the package. Awesome little, bait fish style bait, offered in various sizes, of course, too. This particular one's a 3.8, and there's another endless opportunity for presentations with this as well, whether it's just on a ball head. I prefer this bait on like a 1/4 ounce ball head and just swimming it around. But you can also use it as a swim bait trailer, spinner bait trailer, swim jig trailer. You can, and something I probably shouldn't mention because it catches a ton of fish for me, and it's more of a finesse presentation. I'll use this bait and the 3.3, and I'll peg 1/8 ounce or lighter little tungsten weight in the front of it, and I'll rig it Texas rig, and I will swim this around grass places we go, like grass lakes, or really just in anything, lay downs, docks. You can skip them back way up under docks and kind of float it by those floats and stuff, and it's really, really good finesse presentation when you do that. Throw it on spinning rod, but it gets a lot of bites, and a lot of people don't think about that, but it's a really cool bait. Can be used in tons of different presentations. A lot of great colors too. That's another good thing about it.
You got the magic shad color that our subscribers are getting this month, and they didn't save any of the attractant that they had on the crack and crawl in this bait either. Smells just as strong to me. With this bait, I just saw the other day, I'm not sure if it was on Wired to Fish or where I saw this, but I saw somebody Tokyo rigging a swim bait. So, do you Tokyo rig a swim bait?
I do not.
Okay.
I wouldn't even know how to start to rig a Tokyo rig because I've never used one before, but I see it used quite a bit. It's not something I've really gotten into much yet. But hey, if it catches some fish, power to you.
Yeah, I saw somebody, the video was about like just kind of slow rolling it. They were just like straight retrieving it, and it was keeping the tungsten weight just on the bottom, and it was kind of making it sort of knock across the bottom, and it was swimming, but it was keeping it kind of at the same distance above the bottom, and every time it hit like a rock or something, it would cause it to kind of jar one way or the other. So it was a pretty interesting deal there, and part of me hopes that you actually fish the Tokyo rig swim bait all the time, and that you're just not wanting to share the juice here. But maybe go out and try that. Maybe I just taught you something.
Maybe.
Well, good deal. So one last question here on the swim bait. Choosing between a 3.8, I'm not sure what the next one up is. I think it's like a 4.3 or 4.5. But that's always the biggest struggle for me. And I know people say like match the hatch, but like you can't always, have the luck of having a shad jump up on your boat or just seeing one on the bank or something. So how are you making the decision between going with like a 3.8 or a 4.5 in general terms?
For me, it's kind of like the crack and crawl. I generally will start bigger, and then I'll go down if I need to. Match the hatch is something that's very important. Obviously, if you're seeing a bunch of little bait fish swimming around, little minnows or something, or fish busting on little bait fish, obviously you're going to want to try to match that as best as possible to generate bites. But if I'm somewhere that I may not know what the bait fish size is, or I just haven't seen any activity yet, I'm generally going to start with, the 4-inch version. And then I'm, depending on whether or not I'm getting bit, depending on what size of fish I'm getting bit, I will change from there. If I'm getting, 1 or 2 bites a day, but they're 4, 5, 6 pounders, I'll probably leave one rigged up. And if I feel like I need to generate more bites, I may downsize and see if I can catch those 2 to 3 pounders, but get more bites. So I'll downsize, get more bites. And then once I catch a bunch of fish, whether it's a MLF style format where I need a bunch of those, I'll use that smaller size, catch those middle class fish, get a bunch of weight, stay up there in points for the day. Or if I'm fishing, a 5-fish format, I may stick with that 4-inch version and throw it all day and hope to catch 5 of those 4 to 6 pounders, or maybe catch a kicker on them. Just kind of depends on what you're fishing, what your goals are with it, but also what the fish tell you they want.
So I know you're getting packed up, ready to go to heavy hitters. I know you've spent a lot of time with us here, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. With heavy hitters coming up, how do you think that's going to play out?
Man, it should be setting up good. It's springtime. There's giant fish that live there, as we've seen in the past. It was a place that when I went there the first time, I knew there was big fish. I didn't really know what to expect, and I let it get the better of me. Thought I was going to do better. I think I fished a little too fast paced for that place. I'm definitely ready to get back and get some redemption at it. I'm mad at them there, so I plan on catching a big fish and a bunch of them when I get there for heavy hitters.
Well, you got the momentum behind you, and I know that's a big part of this game and having consistent success. So best of luck to you there, and thanks for stopping by and dropping some information on us.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
So that's right, folks. Double Magoogan this month for the Saucy Swimmer and the Crack and Craw. And just so you know, we're only going with the staples, the juiciest color. So that's what we got you here, a green pumpkin. And what they're referring to at Googan is called magic shad. All I know is it looks pretty magic to me, looks pretty delectable. And if I was a bass, I'd probably eat it. So up next, you'll already know who this guy is. If you watched the last edition of Unpacking with the Pros, he agreed to hop back on here again with us from Lancaster, Kentucky, another young gun on the Bass Pro Tour that's dominating at the highest levels of bass fishing right now, Mr. Bradley Roy. Bradley, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be sitting here talking to you, sitting in our Kentucky office. And I know you're actually headed to heavy hitters and willing to do this interview when you got the family packed up in the car. So we definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, I got my wife driving, and I jumped over here in the passenger seat. We got a little bit left, but that enabled me to jump on here with you and talk a little bit about baits. So I know in the box coming out, some folks are going to be getting the new CT3 squarebills from Arc Fishing. So, a squarebill is just one of those baits that everybody throws them. If they're not throwing them, they should be throwing them, but they're not all created equal. So I think it's gonna be a bait that they're gonna like, and I think it's gonna be a good addition to everybody's tackle box.
Talking about squarebills, and like you said, what are you looking for in a bait that makes a squarebill unique? And how much does this magnetic weight transfer system apply? Is that something that you've seen in other squarebills?
Yeah, well, so other baits do have it on the market. This is really, to me, a super important deal in baits, and I'll give you an example. So there's a lot of great baits out there in the world, but the deal is if you can't cast that bait, and that's what the magnetic weight transfer system is going to do. It's going to allow you to cast that bait further, more accurately, with less effort. And the example that I give is the Shad Rap. Everybody knows that a Shad Rap is a great fish catching bait, but the problem with the Shad Rap has always been you got to throw it on a spinning rod because most of the time it's too light to throw on a bait caster. We still do that. We deal with it because it's a great bait. But that's why companies, and just like Arc is doing with this squarebill, they're putting that magnetic weight transfer in there so you can cast this bait. So you got a bait that you're going to catch fish on. You're not struggling to get it in and around whatever you're wanting to fish with. And that leads me into the next thing about a squarebill is the key to this squarebill. You're going to look at this this bait, and the whole deal is a square bill. And the point is that you can run it into anything. They say it's the 4-wheel drive of crankbaits. You can run this bait into rocks, stumps, laydowns, docks, whatever it is, and it's not going to get hung up. It's still going to get hung up, but it's not going to get hung up as much as other crankbaits, your round bill crankbaits, things of that nature. So the point is, you can, with that magnetic weight transfer, you can take and cast it, put it where you put a spinnerbait, put it where you put a swim jig, put it where you put a jig, not any other jig, and you can climb it back out of there. Now the key to it is, for me, if I'm fishing rock, if I'm fishing riprap, you want this contacting the bottom the whole time. You want to use that square bill for exactly what it is. I mean, you want to be beating it off the bottom. If it's not contacting something, I don't think your chances of getting a bite are near as high. The other side of that is if you're fishing wood, if you're fishing laydowns, if you're fishing stumps, whatever it is, you don't have to be contacting the bottom per se, but when you get to that piece of cover, you need to crash this bait into that piece of cover, because that is the point. That's why this bait is so hard to beat, because from, whether it's pre-spawn, post-spawn, fall, even in the winter, if the bass are in that 0 to 5 foot range, which is what this square bill is going to cover, this is really hard to beat. You can get bit on it because you can simply put it where you can't put other crankbaits.
Obviously, right now we're having this conversation in April. In a lot of places in the U.S., it's pre-spawn, it's heavy spawn, it's even post-spawn in some areas. How does this factor in to your tool belt when you're identifying what stage the fish are in, and how are you adjusting your retrieve when you're using this as a search bait, if you are using this as a search bait versus if you're trying to specifically target them with the square bill crankbait?
I'm using this as a search bait nearly all the time. I mean, it's probably, I would say, if you could talk to me and you talk to 10 other pros, and there would be 9 of us that would say there would be rare occasions that we go out without this bait on our deck as a search bait. Just simply because of what I said, it's a 4-wheel drive. You're not gonna get hung up a lot. It's gonna get bites. It catches big ones. It catches small ones. And then the other things too, I'm holding a red one. So pre-spawn, we all know red is great. Certain parts of the country, red's better, but those crawfish are getting a little more active as that water temperature warms into the 50-degree range. And the bass, know that. They're looking for those crawfish, and more than likely those crawfish are going to have a bright orange, bright red color to them. That's why we go with these, bright red colors. What's interesting with a square bill is you can mimic a crawfish. That's what they're looking for. They're going to eat that. They're going to look for that crawfish type meal. But as you transition through the spawn, maybe during the spawn you throw more chartreuse, maybe you throw more something that resembles a bluegill, something that's going to aggravate bass while they're spawning. I dropped my phone here and running down the road. But you're going to aggravate those bass as they're spawning with that. And then right after that, we get into a shad spawn. We get into fish feeding on during post spawn. When they start to feed back up, they really get back on that bait fish. Well, the cool thing is, with the same bait, you can just change colors. I mean, you could take 3 different colors in this bait, and you could cover a whole array of a time of the year. And that to me makes it really versatile. And that's why I love the square bill, because no matter the cover or no matter the time of the year, I can make a few small tweaks to this and really be dialed in to able to get more bites.
So it sounds like the temp range is what's going to be a critical factor for you in determining color and transitioning away from those more super bright red colors that everybody talks about this time of year, which is why this month we wanted to equip our subscribers with the red one that you have in your hand, but also they're going to be getting a second one in this blueback herring color, which if you look at that, you can see what I was talking about as far as like just the amount of time and energy and expertise that went into not just the design, but the paint, the patterns that they chose to go with for to color these lures with, and a lot of great options there that you can see at tacklewarehouse.com. But continuing to talk about the importance of color, is there a specific temperature that when it hits this, I'm not throwing red anymore, I'm transitioning to bluegill and more of these blueback herring type shad colors?
They'll bite red a lot of the other times of the year, but for me, 65, 60 degrees and below is really where I focus on my crawfish colors, like your reds. And then above that, I'm going to transition away from that and go back to my bait fish colors, simply because your bait fish are going to be more active. They're going to be up around shallower cover. They're going to be beating and banging, moving. You got shad spawn that happens somewhere around 72 to 75, 76 degrees. So somewhere all in there, that's when, to me, that's the transition line. And like I said, there's no absolute. I always joke around about this. The bass don't read the textbook, so you got to remember that. But for me, it's really the spawn. So until the fish spawn, red is hard to beat. There's other colors that'll get bit, but red is really hard to beat, especially in that, the Midwest range of the country, the North Carolina, South Carolina part, my part of the world, Kentucky, any part around in there, those fish really key in on that red. And a lot of that has to do too with, we get a lot of rainfall in the spring. When in the late winter, early spring, we get a ton of rainfall to come into these lakes. But what happens? Those lakes get really dirty, and that bright red, this just like this red I'm holding here, those fish can hear it, they can feel it coming, but when it gets there, they can see it, and then it's kind of matching the hatch already. So it just ties it all in together, and then when they eat it, that's the time when they eat it, you see it's down their throat because it's really dialed into the right color.
Circling back around something you said earlier, you mentioned how the key to this is deflecting it off of cover and bottom contact. That's been the hardest thing for me. I'm sure there's other anglers out there that, there's a difference between going out there and throwing a squarebill and then being good with the squarebill and knowing how to use it as a tool in the way that it's supposed to be used. Is there something you keep in mind as far as like a cadence, how much of a pause you take? I mean, because it sounds like, and I've heard this before, if you're fishing this around structure, the key is knocking it off of that piece of structure and then pausing it. What are you keeping in mind when you're hitting this off of structure, and how can you be a more effective squarebill angler when you're fishing this, knowing that you're going to need to do other things with this bait other than just reel it straight back to the boat?
That's a good point. And for me, it's not a set way. Like I said, bass don't read the same books we read. So there's no set way that, Bradley Roy said to do it this way. That's the way they're going to bite every time. I kind of let the fish tell me, so I'll reel it through and beating and banging off the cover kind of quick. And then if I'm not getting bit like that, I'll stop and pause it. Sometimes I'll crawl it through a lay down. Just depends on what's going on with the fish that day. And they'll usually tell you. If you're around some fish, they usually won't take long for them to tell you how they want that bait. I've even seen times where we were at Lake Martin a few years ago down in Alabama, and the only way, how you create this, I don't know, but the only way I could get bit was if I got my squarebill hung up in whatever cover I was fishing, and then it popped free. And it was interesting. It was like those fish were watching it. So there's always something different. There's always a different way to do it, but the key is don't just reel it. Sometimes they'll bite it like that, but one of the big keys is get it down in there. Once you hit cover, stop it, maybe crawl it a little bit, or when it gets to the cover, I even like to sometimes just kind of feather it through. That'll help you not get it hung up. But the key is you want this to be wherever you think you shouldn't throw a crankbait. That's really where you probably should put these squarebills, because like I said, that's the point. Now you're going to lose some, you're going to get them hung up. You got to be patient with that. But if you don't throw them in those places, then you might as well just be throwing any other type of crankbait. That there's no advantage to your squarebill. That is the point, is that you can cover water with this bait so quickly and so efficiently, because no matter what you approach with your boat, this bait can catch them out of it and it can get through it. And that's why this bait has become so popular. That's why you see the squarebill as one of the most consistent bite getters from January to December.
I'm glad you mentioned, that you're going to need to be throwing this thing around places that you might get some other things hung up, and you might get this bait hung up, because Tackle Warehouse is currently offering $2 off of this bait. It's normally, I think, $7.99. Right now it's $5.99. So viewers out there, if you are going to throw this thing and you either are worried about breaking it off, or maybe you've already gotten this and you have broken it off, go to Tackle Warehouse. They're going to make sure that you've got the support you need to add more of these to your tackle box lineup. Real quick, one last thing I want to cover here, because it's a crucial part of this, is the setup that you'd recommend rod, reel, and line wise when you're fishing this bait.
So that's super important. So you got to have a bait or a rod that you can cast this with. We talked about how easy this one is to cast, but they're small baits, so you don't need a rod that's going to overpower them. For me, I use an Arc Invoker Pro, and I use a 7-foot. Now, some guys may want a shorter rod, some may want a longer rod. For me, 7-foot works, and it's a medium. And what I like is either a medium or medium heavy and a moderate action rod. Now, whatever crankbait rod you're using, what you want to remember is you don't want a fast tip. And a fast tip is what you would use on your jigs and your worms and things like that. You want a rod that's going to bend in the middle, not toward the tip. You want that bend to be very parabolic. That Arc rod is very, very much so that. It's a composite rod, so it's partially glass, partially graphite, so you can still feel a little bit, but that glass is what really keeps those fish hooked up. So you can cast with it, but when a fish actually gets it, you don't have to set the hook with these treble hooks. You're literally just reeling and setting into them. The next thing that really is important with these square bills is your line size. So I mentioned you're putting this into some really super thick cover. So obviously you'd start thinking about, hey, I want to upsize my line. This is not a bait I throw on 10-pound test. I throw it on 12-pound test at a minimum, which is probably, takes about 50% of the time I'm throwing it. I'm putting it on 12-pound test. But I also go to 15-pound Seagar in VizX and 20-pound, just depending on how shallow I want to keep it. Sometimes these fish are setting super, super shallow in the tops end of these laydowns, stumps, whatever it may be, and I want to keep this bait as shallow as I can run it. Plus, if one gets it, I don't want to worry about breaking him off. So if the water's dirty, I'll go as high as 20-pound test. I use the 12 to 20-pound test to decide how deep this bait needs to run. That's important. And then the next thing is I use a 6-to-1 gear ratio reel. Don't go 7, don't go 5. 5's too slow. 7 I think is too fast. That'll keep you right inside where you need to be. And I think that's a pretty good general rule that most pros would agree with me on is that you need to be around that 6-to-1 gear ratio reel. Put you some 12, 15-pound test on there. Get you one of these square bills, and you're going to catch some bass. There's no wrong way to fish them. And that's what's cool about them. And they're simply just bite getters. I mean, and not to mention just bite getters, you're going to catch some good fish. So, but the setup is definitely important because once you hook that fish, you got to be able to get him in the boat. And that's where that rod, that medium to medium heavy, moderate action rod really comes into play.
You've dropped some great information on us here. I've learned a lot about square bills just in a few minutes, so we've been able to talk. But I know that Danielle is probably ready for you to get off the phone and you guys can get back to driving. But tell her I said thank you for chauffeuring during your interview, and best of luck the rest of the way. And good luck at Heavy Hitters.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome discussion there with Bradley on the new Arc Fishing CT3 square bill that's coming out, and also square bill fishing in general. But again, reminder, subscribers, both of these, this is what you're getting this month. CT3 from Arc in 2 different colors. We wanted you to have the popular spring fishing bait, that color in the red craw, and then we also wanted you to have that bait for the transition to more of a shad bait fish style. Wanted you to have everything you needed to go out there and catch some fish depending on where you're at. So, but Arc Fishing, obviously, they are releasing some incredible products right now. I mean, just look at the paint job on this blueback herring. I mean, that is just a really, really cool color. So excited to see what else is coming from Arc this year. And you can expect more features from them in the Champions Club later in 2021. Now, moving on, excited to bring on our next guest because he's a clear water fishing expert, lives in California, so he knows a thing or two about how to entice these deeper suspended fish. And we're putting a bait in here this month that's going to be great for just that. This angler has over $500,000 fishing on the pro circuit. He has been fishing at the FLW Tour level, which is now the pro circuit, since 2015. And he has 23 top 10s and 4 wins in just 131 events. So 23 top 10s and 131 events. I went ahead and did the math there for you. That's 17.5% of his finishes are in the top 10. So pretty impressive clip right there. But without any further ado, let's bring him on from Winter Springs, California, Mr. Jimmy Reese. Welcome on, Jimmy. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm jealous of where you are right now. I'm sitting here at a desk in an office, and it looks like you're somewhere in California, I'd guess.
Yeah, actually, I got the boat hooked up. I'm getting ready to go out on Clear Lake and put a little hurting on the fish out there. They're pretty active right now. So
I'm guessing if you're going out there later today, I won't ask you too many questions because I know you're probably itching to get out there, but it's clear water, I'm sure, in California. And we all know clear water. There's one bait in particular that shines, and that's what our subscribers are getting this month. So Jimmy, tell our subscribers what's coming to them.
Awesome. We are introducing the Yo-Zuri 3DB jerkbait. And this is the 110. It's an awesome bait. It comes in 12 different colors. This is one of my favorite colors, which is basically a shad color. And this bait runs about 5 to 8 feet of water. It has a totally different action than all the other jerk baits. First of all, it has the flat sides. It also has a ribbed bottom. So when you watch the action of this, like you said, in clear water, I mean, you can really see the darting action. It's totally erratic, different action than the other jerk baits. And it also gets, the nose of the bait will end up down. So it's a totally different look when it's sitting there. So, for me, it depends on the time of year as far as presentation, if how fast I'm, jerking the rod and getting the erratic action of the bait. But, it's just totally different, and it sits a little different when it's sitting there in the water. So, and then of course, popping it from that position, it just gives it a different action. So this is the 3DB jerkbait 110 that suspends. Great bait, especially this time of year. It seems like, early spring, from the winter time all the way through, post spawn is just a great time to throw this bait. Of course, you could have it in the box and on a rod all year around. So,
and I'll be honest with you, jerk baits are one of those tools that everybody needs to master that I do not have a lot of confidence with. I don't throw jerk baits a lot, and I've got a bunch of them, but for me, it's the question of which one do I tie on? And you got the 110, you've got the deeper version, the 110 deep that Yo-Zuri also has. If you're somebody like me who is trying to build confidence in this bait and you're throwing this for the first time, what are you keeping in mind? You've cast it out there. What do you do next?
So, I find targeting points, primary points, secondary points is probably the best way of starting. I'm going to be covering water, maybe casting every 15 feet. And just moving the boat along, at a decent pace, and just trying to find those active fish. And so when you're throwing something erratic, those active fish, they're going to come up and take a look at it and probably eat it. So vegetation lakes, like what I have here on Clear Lake, and of course Sam Rayburn and Okeechobee and all the lakes that have a lot of vegetation, you can draw those fish out of the vegetation, just working it over the tops of it. And so, what I like to do is kind of a jerk, taking the rod tip and just doing a nice jerk, getting the bait to be a little erratic and pausing. And I might count to 2 or 3 seconds and then take another jerk, and then same thing, 2 more seconds, and then maybe just a 1 jerk or a triple jerk. And just keep it erratic, 1-2 seconds. That would be the presentation I would start with. And just, I'm really taking that rod tip and giving it a nice sharp, I like almost a slack line jerk of the rod tip. And that's making the bait go erratic. And that's what you're trying to make it look like an injured fish. And you do this long enough, I promise you're going to catch some fish. So one of the misconceptions I've heard you address actually in another video is that jerk baits are only a clear water bait. You've got to have a lot of visibility to be able to use them. And I have heard you correct that misconception and say that a lot of times you can throw this in dirtier water. If you have a dirty water approach with a jerk bait, how does your cadence change, your approach? Is any of that different than fishing clear water? What's the secret to fishing this in dirtier water? Dirtier water, maybe it takes them a little, an extra half second to hone it down and find the bait. So your pauses can be a little bit longer, but they're going to track it down. And I'm talking about mostly shallow water, or maybe we're talking March, April, where the fish are moving in the shallows. So you got the dirtier water, and yeah, they're going to be close to the bank anyway. So maybe go to the larger size jerk baits and get a bigger bait in front of them as well.
So a critical piece of this that we haven't discussed yet is the rod, reel, and line choice here that you have when throwing a jerkbait. Obviously, it's critical. Could you shed some light on that?
Oh, absolutely. So rod selection is, you want something with a light tip. And so I use the Douglas rods, and they're out of Syracuse, New York. And I'm looking for a 3 action, kind of a light tip rod, something that's going to make the bait pop when you jerk the rod tip. So like a 7'3", so a 703 action rod is preferable. If I'm going with a bigger bait, a bigger jerk bait, maybe the 110 deep, maybe I'll put it on a 704. So the 4 means it's a little stiffer rod, but still soft. It's still a real soft tip. So 703 is perfect for throwing jerk baits all day, and it's just going to give it the right action.
Thinking a high-speed retrieve too, it would be my assumption here for the reel.
So 7 to 3 to 1, maybe 7.1 to 1 is actually preferable for throwing a jerk bait, because if you're doing a faster retrieve, 8 to 1, 9 to 1, as soon as you turn the rod tip, you got straight line and there's no bow. So when you jerk, you're going to still get some action on it, but you're going to get more action if you have a little bow on the line. So yeah, 7-1, 7-3, 703 rod, we'll go over the line.
Absolutely. Yeah, the line's the most important part here. I think it's obviously fluorocarbon. Yozuri's fired up about it, and I can't get any of it because I asked Chris over at Yozuri. He was like, I'm going to send you some line, but honestly, I'm out of this new stuff. And he sent me some of this hybrid, which is incredible. I actually broke an eyelet off of a jig that I got hung up the other day on 10-pound test because it was that strong that it broke it. But what are you throwing with this jerkbait?
So I'm going to throw a fluorocarbon because I want something with not a lot of memory. You know, the new T7 by Yozuri. This is excellent for throwing a jerkbait, crankbaits, and basically everything. Generally, 12-pound test is what I throw. However, if I'm trying to get the jerkbait to go a little deeper, maybe on steeper reservoirs, you know, I'll go to a lighter line. So I'll go to a 10-pound or even an 8-pound test fluorocarbon. So generally, you know, the lighter the line, the deeper the bait's going to go. So it all depends on what, you know, you're looking for in the conditions that you have. So
excellent. And Yozuri, they're coming out with line. They've got line out there, folks. So watch out, because if they're sticking to the quality like we've seen with their bait line, you're going to get that with obviously their lineup of fluorocarbon braid, and you get this hybrid here. Have you had a chance to try out the super braid or this hybrid yet from Yozuri?
Oh yeah, so the super braid, you know, I'm not telling a lot of people about it. Sorry, Chris. But no, actually, it casts forever, and so going through the guide, it's real smooth, and so loving the braid. So the hybrid, the fluorocarbon. You know, the braid. So it's just you know, Yozuri's done a great job coming out with something that everybody can use. So real excited about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are excited about it because they can't keep it on the shelves. So if you could do me a quick favor, put that in a little box and ship it to my address here in Kentucky, I would greatly appreciate it. Well, it's been great talking to you. You've shared a lot of information on jerkbaits, on all the equipment that you need to be using with these and everything you should keep in mind. If you're somebody that's never tried this before, I would encourage you to go out and use the 110 that you've got in your box this month, because the hardest thing is deciding which one to tie on, which one to build that confidence in. And you know that with Yozuri right out of the package, from the hooks, design, all of that's been really well thought out. So you know that if you're just learning this bait, you can go out there and have confidence in it. Yozuri is going to have a big impact in this program. You know, they're going to have more than obviously just the jerkbait coming later this year. You're going to see some other cool things, new product launches from Yozuri. But Jimmy, it was great catching up with you. You know, I really appreciate your time, and I know you've got a lot better things to do with a day like you're having out there in California. So,
heck no, I love doing this, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, maybe we'll get a chance to talk to you later on this year, and best of luck at Lake Murray.
All right. Appreciate it, Tom. You have a good day.
Some great intel there from Jimmy on jerkbait fishing from a jerkbait expert. And again, guys, only juicy colors coming in the Champions Club. These are two great ones. This is the Table Rock Shad and the Gizzard Shad in the 3DB 110 jerkbait from Yozuri. And again, Yozuri releasing a lot of great products this year, a lot of new hard baits. They've released this line of braided line and fluorocarbon and this hybrid, which has gotten excellent reviews. They can't keep it on the shelves, like I said. So definitely check out what they have coming, and also check out Hardcore as well, also part of the Yozuri family. They have a great lineup of hard baits. They have all your basic stuff, lipless crankbaits, all that hard bait stuff, but then they also have some of the more exciting stuff like this Hardcore glide bait. I don't even know how to say this. The Ninja Twitching Glider. Yeah, the Ninja Twitching Glider right there. So Hardcore's got a lot of exciting stuff, part of the Yozuri family. So check out that whole lineup. But that's a wrap, guys. That's what we do here again on the Champions Club. We interview the best pros in the world as we send the best baits to our subscribers every single month. So be looking for these, be looking for all the great discount codes. The Champions webinar is coming up later this month, and everything else that comes with the Champions Club. So stay subscribed. If you're not subscribed, subscribe, because this is the kind of stuff we're sending to you every single month. And just to recap real quick, I know that for those of you out there that may have fast forwarded to the end to see me recap everything, I will tell you real quick what the retail value range is on this stuff, just as a quick recap here. This is what you're getting this month. First off, you have your Yozuri 3DB 110 jerkbait. It's a $9.49 retail. You're getting the two ARC squarebills right here, the CT3 in two different colors. Those are $7.99 retail, but $5.99. They're discounted right now in Tackle Warehouse. Check that out. For subscribers, you're getting $2 off these. So from $7.99 to $5.99. Again, you're going to get that double Guggen this month. You got the Saucy Swimmer and you got the Kraken Craw. And then last but certainly not least, you have the Berkley Digger 6.5. All of this added together, it's about a $44 to $45 retail value. You include the discount, so you knock $2 off of these, ARC squarebills, and say those are $5.99, even though they're $7.99 normally. You're still over a $40 value. So again, don't want to spend too much time on that because it's not something you're going to have to be concerned about. We stick to our value. We source only the best products, and they're brands that work with professional anglers, and pros are only going to be throwing the stuff that they know works. So you can trust us with that every single month, and you can trust that on Unpacking with the Pros. We're going to be deep diving into great information every single time. So stick around, check out the next segment of this. Be looking for the Champions webinar. It's going to be with Ott Defoe, the last Sam Rayburn Stage 1 champion. So a lot of great stuff coming your way to our subscribers. And thanks for watching Unpacking with the Pros. See you next time.